if I tell you I knew what insulin resistance was before summer of 2024, I am a liar. That's because I did not know what insulin resistance was. I knew of type 2 diabetes, pre-diabetes, and some other cardiovascular diseases, but insulin resistance was not in my vocabulary. And insulin resistance was not detected in my yearly physical lab work. And insulin resistance was not a red flag for my primary physician to potentially check into, potentially ask for insulin resistance tests. But insulin resistance is a precursor to many of the pre-diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and cardiovascular diseases and unexplained weight gain. For me, insulin resistance has caused years of symptoms that I could not identify the true root causes to it. Back then, I just simply shrugged it off as part of aging. But knowing what I know now, it wasn't aging. It was lack of adjustment, nutrition, and lifestyle. Before I show you my lab work since 2019, what is insulin resistance? Insulin resistance is when our body cells, liver, fat, and muscle cells are not effectively responding to insulin. That's the hormone that is regulating our blood sugar. When our body fails to respond to insulin, our pancreas create more insulin to get rid of the blood sugar in the bloodstream. And over time, if our pancreas cannot create enough insulin, guess what it leads to? Prediabetes and type 2 diabetes. But yet, insulin resistance, which can be precursor to metabolic issue, is not part of the standard test. That, to me, is disappointing. The standard tests are designed to detect the symptom that can be suppressed with medication, but it is not testing what could be preventing the chronic illnesses. That is our modern care. That is managed care. These are my lab work since 2019. And thanks to the standard lab work as part of yearly physical exam, I knew that I had high cholesterol, especially LDL. That has always been very high. I had high triglyceride early on, but it went down into acceptable level since 2022. And my HDL was below the range and only within the range in 2025. And of course, my LDL has always been very high. And my total cholesterol is high because of the LDL. My physician has suggested that I take statin. And for me, medication is the last resort. I will not take medication until I try all the lifestyle changes that I can try, put my hands on. Nutrition, exercises, you name it. And thanks to my mindset of making medication suppressing a symptom as a last resort, always try to identify true root causes so that the symptoms never occur in the first place or other side effects that come along with the medication. I was able to find an insulin resistance ratio that replaces or a good alternative to the insulin resistance test itself. If you look at the HDL over glucose, these are the range of ideal, borderline high, and very high. Triglyceride to glucose index, these are the ranges. If you look at my 2019 to 2021, I was indeed very high risk, 4.63 to 6.07 in HDL over glucose ratio, and 9.22, 9.46 for the triglyceride over the glucose index. You notice since 2022, my HDL over glucose ratio, as well as triglyceride glucose index improved. That's because I started to introduce physical activity, strength training again. Since 2016, when I experienced herniated disc L4 and L5, any physical activity was excruciating pain. Even washing dishes, changing wiper blade, reaching over, sitting down for extended period of time, or walking or standing, they were painful. And in 2022, on and off through 2023, I started to find exercises that I could do without, and stretches that I could do without herniated disc flare up. And I was able to strengthen my back. And the stretches that I did, that I performed, it allowed me to keep going with the therapy so that I can fully recover. The real breakthrough in reversing insulin resistance is the latter part of 2024 into 2025 and now 2026. That's because in 2024, August of 2024, I started the 60-day challenge where I lost 23 pounds in 60 days with OMAD 1 meal a day and 10,000 steps. Since then, I have not looked back. If you want to see the 15 benefit of OMAD and 10,000 steps, I also have it here as well. In the interest of time, you can read through the symptoms I had before my lifestyle change. I no longer have any of those symptoms. I believe what led to insulin resistance was my lifestyle. I only had 3 to 5 hours sleep because I believe in sleep when I'm 9 feet underground. I was also a workaholic. I love to work. I love the challenge. Problems to me is opportunities. Maybe that may have caused unnecessary elevated cortisol level. And lack of physical activity due to hernias L4 and L5 also contribute to that. So all those things stack up that may have led to insulin resistance. My hope, what you get out of this episode, is if you have symptoms similar to what I experienced pre-2024, and your lab work potentially raised a red flag where you have high triglyceride over glucose ratio, and also your HDL is also out of range, out of normal range, that is a red flag to potentially request insulin resistance if it is not part of standard test, or if your primary physician failed to potentially see that as a red flag. Because if it's not addressed, it can lead to further metabolic issue. And if it's not addressed, it can make weight loss a steep challenge. You see on social media, you see people talk about it's always calories in, calories out. It's thermodynamic. It's willpower. But if you have insulin resistance, sometimes it can override your willpower because those hormones is causing you to keep wanting to eat more because it doesn't have the nutrients that your body need, or it thinks it doesn't have the nutrient your body need because your body is not responding to insulin the way it used to in your younger years. As always, I'm not a doctor, a nutritionist, or a physical therapist. I simply share my personal experiences.